Hi, page turners. Katja here. Today is a little different. We're taking a look at something that's closer to home for me. Every book I'll be talking about is by someone I know, whether through BookTube, work, or my writing group. So this is part review, part celebration, and part supportive nudge for the brilliant indie authors in my orbit. That said, this is not about handing out any gold stars. I think reading and reviewing is to a degree subjective since our personal experiences and preferences will always color how we talk about a book, but I do my best to be objective. So I won't just be praising the books because I know the authors. As always, I'll be honest. We'll talk about what worked, where each book shines, and who they're likely to suit. Whether you're into animal-led fantasy, emotionally resonant picture books, thoughtful historical fiction, or sharp military nonfiction, there is something here worth your time. Remember, you can use the chapters if you want to skip between the book reviews. So here we go. We're starting with The Blight by Andrew Dart, 400 pages, an urban fantasy told from the perspective of a cat named Marmalade. Yes, a literal cat, and no, it's not cutesy, it is epic. Andrew's in my writing group, but I didn't beta read this one. My first glimpse of it was when it began as a 1,000-word short story for our group prompt on Warehouse, where we all critiqued each other's stories. So unlike other group books, coming to the finished novel felt like a real shift. From seed to fully formed story, it gave me the opportunity to experience this like most readers would experience, rather than my having in mind many versions and drafts of this story. So what Andrew does here is rare. He commits fully to an animal perspective without over-anthropomorphizing. These cats feel like cats, intelligent, proud, morally grey, deeply loyal. There's no Disneyfication or Pixarification, none of that blurring of human and animal worlds where the cats are basically humans in fur. It feels more genuine. The world feels dangerous, and emotional stakes are real, and before you know it, you're invested. So why does it feel dangerous? Well, there is a mysterious threat in the neighborhood. This book is heartfelt without being sentimental, sincere and resonant in the best ways. Now, here's something I've been mulling over. In English language publishing, we're almost conditioned to expect animal points of view fiction to be short. Maybe 200 to 300 pages, think Black Beauty, Warhorse, or those Japanese cat novels, those cozy ones. So The Blight breaks the mold by going long, and if you want to nitpick, it could probably be trimmed by 5%, which is maybe 20 pages and really does feel nitpicky. And really, I'd rather a book aim big than play it safe just to fit an arbitrary market fit mold. Something that Lalini Paul's The Bees and Tad Williams' Tail Chasers song do, since they're also between 300 to 400 pages. And as with The Blight, these books take their animal protagonists seriously and trust the reader to do the same. So who is this for? I would say if you like emotionally layered urban fantasy, you'll find a lot to love here. And if you're a cat person, this might be your new favorite in the genre. Then we go on to a very different book. Book 2 is Secret Cloud by Zita Crawford with illustrations by Emma Bilney. This is very short. It's for kids. It's 44 pages and is close to my heart since I worked with Zita Crawford 2 decades ago when we were advocates helping vulnerable adults navigate the healthcare system. Not just that, we were actually what they called partner advocates. When we had to carry out home visits, we went through thick and thin. And because we covered a huge area of East Anglia, which a lot of it is rural, we can tell you about driving into the middle of nowhere, navigating floodwaters, and so much more. That was a long time ago, but that experience gave me so many memories. Since then, Zita's moved on, emigrating and working in the police force in Australia. She's honed her skills in forensic investigation and now focuses on supporting children. And Secret Cloud is part of that mission. It's a beautifully illustrated picture book for kids and their carers. The story follows Tig, a child carrying a secret, and how they learn to express it. The tone is gentle, the storytelling restrained. It opens up space for conversations around emotional safety and communication, without ever getting graphic or distressing. What stood out to me is how Tig is depicted as genderless. It's a small design choice with big impact, allowing more children to see themselves in the story. Now, Emma Bilney's illustrations bring warmth and grounding to every page. I'll be upfront, I'm not a parent or carer of a young child, so I can't speak from that perspective. But even as an adult reader, I could appreciate what it does. It's deceptively simple in the way that the best picture books are. Then we go on to book 3, Orla Rafferty Seeks Her Fortune by Margaret Pinard, 248 pages. I know Margaret through BookTube. We've done some great buddy reads, and she also taught me how to live stream to YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram all at once. So that said, I'm so off meta at the moment that I'm not even on Facebook anymore. But we're not here to talk about my lifestyle choices. Let's talk about the book. Orla Rafferty Seeks a Fortune is a quiet, compelling historical novel set in 1830s Scotland. It's the first in a new series, and it's not driven by big plot twists or sweeping drama, but it has enough emotional weight and tension to keep you fully invested. It's a story about endurance, community, and change. Now, Orla is a young widow whose financial security is suddenly threatened, and what begins as this practical tale where she's settling her late husband's affairs really gradually evolves into something more layered, a sort of late coming of age story where a woman learns to live on her own terms in a world that's structured to prevent exactly that. And you could really see the kernel of that already in her character in terms of who she chose to marry. But her then coming to the realization that there was so much that she was unable to do. In fact, there's a moment early on that really got to me involving how Orla is treated around her finances. It reminded me of a fact I only learned a few years ago, and maybe it will surprise you too. So, in the UK, women weren't legally guaranteed the right to open bank accounts or apply for loans without a male guarantor until 1975. And that's not a typo, not until the Sex Discrimination Act finally prohibited that kind of financial gatekeeping. Before that, even single women with steady jobs often needed their father's or brother's signature to open a bank account. Now, Margaret doesn't hit you over the head with facts like this. Her style is to show, not to tell, and that's part of what makes the historical detail so strong. It's grounded, it's intentional, and never overbearing. The pacing is comfortably slow to medium and very much in the tradition of Elizabeth Gaskell. So, those classics, politically conscious and emotionally resonant. Clearly, like with any other book, it won't be for everyone. If you need a love triangle or at least one dramatic poisoning, look elsewhere. But I say that there are some thrashings in this book, including one with deadly intent. So, maybe more than one. Anyway, if you appreciate character-first historical fiction that builds intentionally, this is a strong start to what promises to be a thoughtful series. Then we go on to MacArthur's Bloody Butchers by Brian Bruce, 224 pages. You may know Brian from his channel Bookish, where he brings sharp commentary to literature, history, and current affairs. His discussions are thoughtful, grounded, and unflinching, qualities that really show up in this book of his. It is military history, but with a tight narrative focus. We follow Company G of the 163rd Infantry Regiment through the Pacific War during World War II, from training in the Pacific Northwest to New Guinea, the Philippines, and the occupation of Japan. What makes the book so effective is its structure. It grounds large-scale events in the experiences of 4 soldiers whose stories give the campaign emotional weight. It's both strategic and personal. You get maps, tactics, and campaign breakdowns, but also letters, exhaustion, fear, and camaraderie. It doesn't feel like dry history, it feels lived, which of course it was. So Brian's voice as a history teacher comes through, retired history teacher, but the prose is clear and direct, free of academic fog. It's accessible without ever dumbing down. If you don't usually read military history, this could be a strong entry point. A handful of sections are densely detailed, and whether that pulls you in or pushes you away will depend on your appreciation for some tactical granularity. But it wasn't overly much, and personally, I don't often think about that granularity and still found those sections really immersive. And I think that's because by that point, um, I was already tied in with that emotional or personal thread throughout the book, which holds everything really well together. What I especially appreciated is that it doesn't romanticize war. It lays bare the brutality on both sides without being exploitive. There's respect, but also honesty. And I liked that he includes a Japanese officer's journal for a broader, more complex view as well. If you like focused military history with a human core, this belongs on your shelf. And if it's a hit, then try Fingerbone 2 by Hiroki Takahashi next. But be warned that that one is grim. Yeah, and it's purely fiction. It's so hard hitting. And I'm not just randomly recommending it to sort of like traumatize you. It shares similar geographic areas to MacArthur's Bloody Butchers, especially that New Guinea area. So, my final thoughts are that all four of these books are doing very different things, but each succeeds on its own terms with clarity, care, and a sense of purpose. The Blight is bold, emotionally layered, and it's a sprawling urban fantasy that trusts the reader to lean into an animal point of view and rewards them for it. While Secret Cloud is gentle, precise, and quietly resonant, a deceptively simple picture book that creates space for big feelings without leaning into fear. Orla Rafferty Seeks a Fortune is a slow burning, historically grounded novel about agency, community, and transformation. And MacArthur's Bloody Butchers brings rigor and humanity to military history, making the Pacific battles of World War II feel vivid, intimate, and ethically complex without tipping into sensationalism. What I appreciate most about these books and about indie and small press publishing in general is how seriously they take creative freedom. Each one feels like the culmination of a writer's own passions, experiences, and questions, not a product designed to chase trends or slot neatly into a particular algorithm. They're doing something riskier, trusting us, the readers, to meet them where they are. Yes, I know all four of the authors, and no, it doesn't mean I just handed out soft reviews. If anything, this is a reminder that smart, sincere, ambitious writing is happening all around us, not just on bestseller lists. So these books are proof. And I'm curious, have you ever read a book by someone you know, and did it change how you read it? Did it make you more generous, more critical, or just weirdly self conscious the whole time? Personally, I've been reading the work of people I know for over 2 decades now, so I've made my peace with it. But I'd love to hear your take. And while you're here, what's a small press or indie book you've read recently that more people should know about? Drop it in the comments. You know, I'm always interested in what you're reading and championing. Thanks so much for tuning in. Happy reading and take care.